can suspend their individual career development plan until the issue is resolved, the standards issue is resolved. Let me repeat it. A teacher who is on an improvement plan can suspend their individual career development plan until the issue is resolved. True? Stand? False? Sit. When they're on a plan, do they suspend their career development plan? True?
You don't
False?
have to
Sit.
have a goal. We'll just make this plan is their goal. Do they have two goals?
The answer is actually true on that.
Yeah, just wanted to know.
There you go.
Do you offer that to them?
You should probably mention it, and it's in the model letter.
Okay.
So this is what this means. In theory, here's the theory behind it. The theory is that if there's a standards issue that's that big of a concern they're on a plan, their other goal can be suspended so they have all their attention focused on the standards issue. Once they're off that, they go back to their career development plan.
So just for that.
Just for that whatever amount of time. Yep. And the model letter says that their individual career development plan is suspended. Now, can they say, I'm going to continue working my plan? You bet. They can keep working on it. Ideally, if their plan is also, or they can change their plan. But if they want to suspend the plan based on the master contract and the evaluation, they can suspend their plan.
Wouldn't, like most administrators, or the hope would be that when teachers turn in their individual development plans at year end or beginning of year, whenever your district does it, that the administrator, if they already have concerns for this teacher, that they would have pulled them in and say something like, I see that you have this as your individual plan. Have you thought about doing this to kind of get them geared up already?
Yes, but if that plan is maybe a group plan, it could be different, so they could be pulled out of a group plan to focus on their own. That's one issue. The other thing is sometimes those plans are around specific building goals or something that the principal may not be able to make it that specific. Either way, whatever scenario is, they can suspend whatever plan it was if they've been put on a plan. So yes, that works in a lot of cases, but not all. Good question, by the way. Next one. Stand if you believe this to be true. Any Standard 8 concerns must be filed with the Board of Educational Examiners in the state of Iowa. That's Standard 8 ethics. Any Standard 8 concerns must be filed with the BOEE in Iowa. This is a little bit of a trick question. So to be safe, you can always file those, and they tend to be Standard 8 violations. But the only thing by law, and I'll have Dwayne, or we'll talk about this in law, the only thing by law that has to be filed are student conduct issues, money issues, and other ethics violations that could get them on probation and stuff. If you're not sure, you always file it. But any Standard 8 thing is false, because another Standard 8 thing could be not come to work on time. You don't have to file that with the BOEE. Breaking a contract, you can file it, but you don't have to. But by law, your license is on the line. If you do not file a complaint with the BOEE for a student conduct issue or an embezzlement issue or some of that, your evaluator license, your administrator license is on the line. So if you're not sure, err on the side. You're not sure your superintendent, you tell your superintendent you're not sure they're going to report it, you report it. Because it's your license on the line. Okay? But not necessarily all. Trick question. Last one here. District administration must be notified when a teacher is placed on an improvement plan.
Wait, say that one.
I'll change part of this word. Central office administration must be notified when a teacher is placed on an improvement plan. Central office administration must be notified.
Does that include you're talking about the superintendent?
Yeah. Superintendent of HR. Yeah, must be notified when a teacher's put on a plan. Stand up if you believe that to be true. False. It's actually true. Elementary. So here's the rest of the story on that. And I was just reading some papers over lunch, and somebody didn't have this, so I got to reinforce this point. This is part of the CUME file. So what goes in a teacher's CUME file for their improvement plan? A letter to the, and there's a model letter out there that is part of the course. The identification of concern, what exact standard? That's all the letter says. It's pretty general. It says this teacher with this folder number was put on a plan because of these issues related to this standard. That's pretty much all the letter needs to say. You do not necessarily need to send the improvement plan itself, unless the superintendent requests it, but that letter is part of their CUME file. And so one of the concerns that you get from teachers often is that, well, is this going in my file, blah, 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 blah. Yes, a letter goes in your CUME file to the superintendent, but not the exact plan. If you get off the plan, a letter also goes in your CUME file, 90 days or less later, that you're off the plan and has resolved those concerns. That make sense? So yes, the superintendent or designee must be notified by a letter, but doesn't need the whole plan necessarily. And what has to be in the plan is the teacher, the folder number, the date, and the standard and concern.
And don't they have to approve the plan?
Who?
The superintendent?
No.
You can just put anyone on an improvement plan.
It would be a best practice to make sure you have your superintendent's support.
Right. Because then going through the process, yeah.
But if you don't,
Right.
you can still, you have the authority as a building principal to put somebody on a plan.
And that's in the awareness phase, right?
Yes.
You're notifying the superintendent?
Both.
Okay.
When you take them off, then you always start with the awareness phase. The only time, and there's one time I've not used the awareness plan and then the assistant, and that's when a teacher was on the awareness plan, came off the plan, had the same issues, and put them back on the plan. Otherwise, you always do awareness plan first. Plan, letter to the superintendent, work the plan. 90 days or less, let the superintendent know in writing that they came off the plan or you're advancing to the assistance phase. Okay? Another 90 days, they either come off the plan or you're probably making a recommendation for a non-renewal. Let the process work. Let the process work. If you let this process work, good things happen. Teacher gets better. I mean, think about what can happen in this process. A, you provide the concern, you make the concern evident to that teacher. It holds you accountable, it holds them accountable. They get better, you support them in getting better. Amen. Best case scenario, right? And sometimes it's sit down with them and it's a matter of just getting on the same page. It's called identification of concern, right? Awareness phase, making you aware these are my concerns. And obviously if you can do it in a plan or before you get to a standard evaluation, formative evaluation, even better. Even better. But if not, other good things will happen. You'll get the teacher in a different role in your building or your district that's maybe a better fit. Maybe it's getting them in a better seat. I still get a Christmas card from a teacher at Hampton. I'm not kidding you about this. Still get a Christmas card with a lady I probably had the most awkward conversations with. And she was a special ed teacher falsifying probes. Master's in special ed, by the way, not from Drake. That doesn't matter. Sorry, get off on these tangents. But she was not a special ed teacher. But what she was a health nut. She'd ride her bike to school every day, was on me about what was in the vending machines. I mean, she loved the wellness and the health stuff, right? Well, I had her on a plan. She was not in the right seat. She was not in the right seat. We had a PE, half-time PE job come open. This was a blessing in the district, but it wasn't full-time. Worked with my superintendent who knew she was on a plan, knew I was working with her, had a master, all these things, right? Was there for a long time. What we did is had a conversation with her about here's your options. We're not going to renew your contract, or we think you're a good fit for this position. You can take the pay cut and be a half-time PE teacher, it was middle school PE, and associate. So she took the pay cut and went. I still get a Christmas card from her. She was not happy at the time, let me tell you. She was not happy at the time. Still get a Christmas card from that lady thanking me because she is more happy today than she ever was, even with the pay cut, and still rides her bike to school. So sometimes it is about getting them on the right seat. Not always, but sometimes it is about getting them on the right seat. And so sometimes people ask, so they get better, different spot, or non-renewal. And sometimes you don't even have to do the non-renewal because they leave. They don't want to step up with you, and you're supporting them, they go. It doesn't mean they're good for kids, but they're not going to hurt your kids anymore. Let the process work. So many administrators are afraid to jump in the process and let it work because A, it's a lot of work for them, and B, it's uncomfortable. And if you're not willing to be a little uncomfortable and step up and do the work, then you wouldn't put somebody on the plan. But let the process work. Okay? So let's look at these quickly. Whoops. And you have those tasks open. So you see the difference here. Concern form, identification of concern, and the plan of assistance look very similar. Dates of prior discussions in the concern form, so you know this just isn't putting somebody on a plan automatically. You have specific concerns here related to the teaching standards. These can look a little bit different. But over here you have, again, the standards and a write-up. And let me just be honest with you here. It was always, it's hard to exactly know how much information to put in here in support of the standards of the concern. How much information, because this is my experience. If you write a book here about all the rationale that's led you to put this teacher on the plan, what this can be is the teacher pinpointing and picking at all the issues and disagreeing with you on everything. But if you don't put enough in here to spell out the concern, especially if this gets elevated and you get the union or a lawyer involved, it can look like you don't have enough meat to put them on a plan. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So this was always a little bit tricky for me. I don't want to throw another teacher under the bus. I don't want to throw a parent or student under the bus. But I need to be specific enough here that I really present that this is a concern. But I don't want to be so specific that they start nitpicking on every single thing and disagreeing with parent emails and blah, 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 blah. So this write-up to me was pretty important in identifying the concern and putting the evidence there. When we write up Mrs. Jones, I'm going to try to give you enough that you can almost copy and paste the concerns here, and I'm going to tell you what standard she doesn't meet. Here's another strategy I had. If you're not sure, you know, some of these strategies are similar, put it down. I don't want 20 strategies here, or I don't want 20 standards, but if, you know, I'm thinking about all three, oh, she probably doesn't meet 4, I'm going to put 4 on there. Because I can always show growth and keep her on a plan. Does that make sense? We get to a month out, and she's making some progress in these 2, but not on these. I'm saying she, not because I'm being sexist, but because we're putting Mrs. Jones on a plan, okay? And so, you know, I can take some concerns away, but still have some concerns, and sometimes that can be good because you can say, look, you're showing growth in these areas, but I still have a concern in these areas, right? So I would err on the side of more standards than less, but not so many that this plan is, you know, so, going to be so difficult to meet. Does that make sense? So you can see 2 different kind of write-ups here, but similar in that you have to identify the concern and use documentation for that. And you can see how this is spelled out in these different models. And then when you get down here to actions to be taken, you can see some differences there. This one says plan, methods, and strategies. This one says actions to be taken in timeline. Still similar. Okay, just different form. Then we get down here to proposed timeline. And next meeting date. Again, similar. Proposed timeline, can't be more than 90 days. Next meeting date has to be mutually agreed upon. What happens if we need to move that date back?
Just document it.
Document it. Make sure it's in an email or something in writing and put it in the file. You can certainly move a date around. Bump it up. Make sure it's mutually agreed upon. Okay? And then when is this document official?
When you both signed it?
When you both sign it. That is correct. It goes into effect when you both sign it. What if they don't agree or refuse to sign it?
Write that down and put it on there, put it in the file.
That's correct. I always say the attempts that I've made to have them sign it. So attempted, date, third one, got it. Put it in the file. Let them know it's in effect. Can they put a rebuttal on it? You bet. Normally they can put a rebuttal on it.
You have to do 3 attempts and then it can go in effect, or is that just kind of best practice?
I always said 2 or 3. That could be verbal, that could be emails, and I think I only use 3 because isn't that what you schedule a special ed?
Yeah.
3? So I thought, yeah. So that's why I use 3. If your superintendent does once or twice, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Resources needed and support. So now I want to go back and just take a quick look at this indicator of progress, because one of the things I'm going to ask you to do in a minute is look at these 2 plans and answer the questions in 93 and 95. And the first question on that task in 94 and 96, I'm sorry, in 94 and 96, to knock these tasks off, is will this plan reasonably lead to the teacher improving in the specified areas. So A, if an attorney looks at this or somebody looks at the first bird's eye view of the plan should be, okay, are you putting them on a plan just to document, or are you putting on a plan to really help this teacher improve in these areas? Should be reasonably lead to improvements, right? So you give it to an assistant principal, you let the superintendent read it, you get feedback to make sure it kind of passes that initial test, all right? You can see over here, remember I mentioned my strategy was always underlined? You can see there that this was a strategy that I probably pulled this from their formal evaluation, or I'm writing this up to bring that to their attention. That was always just a strategy of mine to underline if I want to bring it to their attention. Okay, so will it reasonably lead to improvement? The second thing that's the key test here is your indicator of progress. These should almost be SMART goals. Let me back up. These should really be SMART goals. You have to be able to measure. If you can't measure them turning in weekly lesson plans, or your walkthrough feedback, or them having less office referrals, or whatever's in your plan, it's not going to be any benefit to them or you in identifying if the teacher has met the goals or not. It has got to be measurable. Now, the hard part about that is you have to agree on that measurable stuff. And some of the things you ask teachers to do isn't necessarily measurable, like go to a conference. How are you going to measure the effect of that? Are you going to ask them to take notes or just bring back the flyer that they went to a conference? And I would say, who cares if they just went? I want some progress that they're going to do something about their learning if I'm going to invest in them going, right? Co-teaching. I'm going to assign them a co-teacher. Great. Is that measurable? No. But if I ask them for reflections on what they're learning from their co-teacher, now I can start to measure some growth and improvement. Or ask the co-teacher to submit, a weekly blurb about improvements or questions that they discuss. Measurable is sometimes hard with some of the things that you ask the teacher to improve on, but it's got to be measurable and will make your job much easier when you get to the point in deciding if they need to go on to the assistants or if they've met the plan. So when you go into these meetings, finally, when you go into these meetings, the philosophy ought to be that you have a draft, a general draft put together, but it's not finalized, it's not just your baby until you agree on everything that's in there. Then it's finalized. But if you don't go in with a bit of a plan, and you spring this on a teacher, you're the instructional leader that ought to have an idea about how to support them, improve them, and then assess if they're getting better. So you go in with a draft, which we'll create this afternoon.